Hello, this is Dr. Terry James Gingras. I am a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist, and I work a lot with ADHD families. I'm also the author of a #1 bestseller, ADHD Strategic Parenting. And the whole premise of the book is that if you just try to punish an ADHD child to get them to do what they're supposed to, you're going to have a lot of troubles. ADHD kids don't work very well when you're just doing punishment. So what we try to do is basically outthink them. We prepare, think ahead, structure situations, and encourage the heck out of them. Okay? One of the hard things about having ADHD as a kid is that you don't get a lot of positive strokes. You get a lot of criticism. You get a lot of corrections. You get a lot of punishments. You've got teachers telling you you're doing things wrong or that you need to sit down and be quiet. You've got parents telling you that your room's a mess and you got to clean it up and do your homework, and what'd you do with your brother's shoe, and so on and so on and so forth. And it's pretty much continuous with parents and teachers and coaches, and pretty much anybody you interact with is having some troubles with your behavior. I remember we just recently evaluated a young man. He's only 7 years old, but he was so fidgety and hyper that he literally couldn't sit still. It was a nightmare trying to evaluate him, and he kept apologizing the whole time through the evaluations. I'm sorry, I know I should be quiet, I know I should be still, I know I should do this, that, or the other, but I just can't. That's the way it is for some of these children. Not all of them, and not all of them are hyperactive, but all of them get more than their share of punishment and criticism just because of things they can't really control. And it's not a big surprise, I guess, then, that depression is comorbid with ADHD. That is, a significant number of people with ADHD, whether they're kids or adults, have depression. And it's not surprising when you think about it. If you're constantly being told you're doing it wrong, you're not measuring up somehow, you're not doing what you're supposed to, and you're disappointing people, it's real easy to start having a real negative self-image and start seeing yourself as being somebody who disappoints people all the time. And previous videos we've done talked a little bit about the 3 aspects of all the major emotions: the cognitive, the affective, and the physiological. And those are just fancy words for saying think, feel, and the effect it has on your body. Okay, for people with depression, the cognitive part of the disorder is that I call it helpless, hapless, and hopeless. But basically it's things are terrible. I'm not measuring up. I'll never measure up. There's nothing I can do about it, and it's always going to be this way. Sometimes we talk about the negative cognitive triad. It's basically the expectation that things are terrible and they're never going to get better, and there's something wrong with me. I don't measure up, and I never will. That's something basically that's learned. Kids incorporate that because they're constantly basically told that. What is the matter with you? Why can't you just pay attention? Why can't you just sit still? Why aren't you more like your brother? Why aren't you more like your sister? How come you're the only one who disrupts the entire class? Or how come you're the one in the dugout who starts fights at the Little League game? Or gets people angry at him while you're sitting in the dugout? Those are things that ADHD kids hear all the time. And the teacher is like, will you just sit down, please? Sit down and be quiet, or I'm going to put the whole class on yellow light, or whatever behavior strategy they're trying to use in the classroom. But all the other kids know that it's the ADHD kid who's getting them in trouble, and they don't like that, and he'll pay for it later on. So the negative cognitive triad, and then the affective component is just sadness. It's long, enduring sadness. You know, the feeling of hopelessness, the feeling of worthlessness. I mean, those aren't strictly emotions, but we are all familiar with how they feel. And it isn't comfortable. And then it gets to the point where nothing feels good anymore. Things that should be pleasurable just don't do the trick anymore. They are unsatisfying. They cause you to feel like there's just nothing in the world that's any good. And it's anhedonia is what that's called. You know, it's just a fancy Greek word meaning without pleasure, and it's just a manifestation of a pretty significant depression. If your child is just not enjoying the things he or she used to enjoy, that's pretty serious. Okay, that means things have progressed a good long way, and it's overdue time to take some action. Okay, and the last part is physiological, or just the way your body responds. Remember, I said it again and again, your mind and your body, your brain and your body are connected. What goes on in your brain affects your body, makes actual changes in the chemistry of how your body works. And if you don't believe that, bear with me for a second. I'd like you to, right now, close your eyes and think about a lemon. Think about a fresh cut lemon. You're holding it in your hand and you can smell the lemony scent, and it's been cut in half, and so you stick your tongue on the fruit of the lemon, on the part you cut open, and feel that juice on your tongue and in your mouth, how sour it is, how lemony, soury, citrusy it feels. And I guarantee you, you're all salivating. Your saliva glands are working overtime. That's your mind controlling your body. Well, what if your mind is giving your body all sorts of negative messages about how terrible things are and how hopeless it is and how it'll never get better and how you're just helpless to do anything to make it better? Your body starts to manufacture the kind of neurotransmitters, the kind of chemicals that are associated with depression. And when it gets pretty serious, we start seeing things like what we call a vegetative sign disturbance. And a vegetative sign disturbance is the basic processes that we need to basically stay alive start getting interrupted. Sleep gets disturbed, appetite gets disturbed, energy's decreased, that sort of thing. And you got to understand, it's sleep disturbance for depression is different from the kind of sleep problems that ADHD kids have. A lot of ADHD kids have sleep problems because they're just too hyper. Their brain's running on overdrive all the time, and it's hard to slow down and let yourself go to sleep. With the depression, it's a whole other thing. You're just feeling so terrible about everything that you're just lying there whimpering and not able to get restful sleep. When you get to the point where you're seeing a major vegetative sign disturbance, that's the time to take action, because things have gone a little too long, and you can cause yourself serious problems if you're not eating right and you're not sleeping, and you have no energy, no motivation to do anything. It's a bad place to be in. And the absurd thing is, a lot of times people in this situation will say, well, when I feel better, then I'll do something. No, you can't wait till then. You've got to start doing things. And the big thing in all of this is be a good animal. That is, do your best to ensure regular habits, plenty of sleep, eating good, healthy food, and I don't mean any ridiculous restrictive diet. I mean just, food that's got good protein, good fats, and good complex carbohydrates in it. That's what you need, especially for a growing kid. And that's also what you need to start fighting back against depression. Okay, you've got the three components now: the cognitive component, the affective component, and the physiological component. If you see some of these in your child, I highly recommend you get an evaluation done immediately. It isn't going to get better, okay? So you need to take action, and you need to be decisive about it, because depression's dangerous. People die from depression all the time. A lot of times, depression can lead to suicide. It's not my intention to go into suicide in great detail here, but just understand that suicide is one of those things that people do when they feel like there's no hope left, that nothing's ever going to get better. So you have to watch out for that as well. But in general, you see depression, you see the signs, you hear the talk about that shows so low self-esteem that, oh, I can't do that, I don't know how to do this, how come all the other kids do better than I do at this, all those kinds of negative comments. And that's what the child is thinking about him or herself. You see that's not normal. That's not the way it's supposed to be. I mean, of course, everybody has a little bit of disappointment in life. That's what makes you stronger as you get older. But if you are hearing a constant string of this, I can't do it, son, I'm not good enough, kinds of things, you need to make sure that a reasonable evaluation is done. And ideally, the evaluation is done by a psychologist working with a psychiatrist. That's the optimal and objective way to get a good, accurate diagnosis and make sure you're not going off somewhere else into some diagnostic territory that you don't really need to get into. Okay, so you've got a child who's has speech content, the way he talks about himself, it's negative and hopeless and that sort of thing. The emotions seem to be sad. He'll cry at the drop of a hat, or he seems to be down, got his head down, no energy, starting to have trouble sleeping, the appetite's gone, not having enough energy to even go play. You're seeing a lot of that kind of thing, then you need to take some action. And like I said, get him to his doctor, get him to his pediatrician, let him then make the determination about whether or not he wants to refer to psychiatric practice. And then when you get a full evaluation, for goodness sakes, treat it, okay? It's nothing to be embarrassed about. Everybody gets depressed from time to time, and like I said before, depression can be a killer, so you need to treat it seriously. It's not always. I mean, most of us have our down times and then we recover, but if your young child is showing some signs that he or she's depressed, then you need to press forward and get a good evaluation, get some treatment started, and intercept this and get it turned around. You can turn it around, okay? And it isn't always medication that you need, okay? There's nothing in particular that says that depression is because you don't have enough Prozac on board. Depression is a complicated thing that has a lot of cognitive components. And there's a lot of good research suggesting that cognitive behavior therapy can be as effective as medication in a large number of depressions. Okay, cognitive behavior therapy, if you're not really sure what that's about, is basically identifying the negative thoughts that are associated with the depression and getting the patient to challenge those thoughts, to see that they aren't technically true, that they aren't, if you're looking at the videotape, they won't see what the evaluation you're making. So it's a tricky thing, and it takes a certain amount of skill in the therapist, but you can teach relatively young children to counteract their negative depression-causing cognitions. It's not easy, it's not quick, but it does work, and you have to hang in there. And as a parent, you need to be supportive of that sort of thing. A lot of times you'll be asking, you'll be asked to help your child with a journal as soon as they can write reasonably well, to get them to start writing down their thoughts and that sort of thing. And then do some self-observations of those thoughts, and then find the ones that are causing difficulties and learn how to neutralize those with logical thinking. I know it sounds a little convoluted when I'm just talking about it, but it is effective. It does work. There's plenty of research that supports it as perhaps the method of choice for depression, and I highly recommend it. That would be, if my child was depressed, that would be the main thing I would be looking at, and I highly recommend that you start looking for that as well. So we've pretty much covered, it's kind of a quick look, I understand, at depression and ADHD. The important things are to, first of all, recognize it or understand it, and then take action. Don't let it just keep going, because it doesn't get better. Okay, and a lot of the kids who end up doing dangerous, self-destructive kinds of things do it because they started out getting depressed and more depressed, and somebody offered them something that seemed to offer some relief to them. In a lot of cases, you'll find drug abuse starting that way. Oh, it's the only thing that makes me feel better. It's the only thing that I don't worry when I'm doing this, or this, that, or the other. I've heard pretty much all the stories. So there is a strong connection between untreated, both ADHD and depression, and, shall we say, use of recreational substances. Okay, so once again, I am Dr. Terry James Gingras. I am a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist, and I specialize in ADHD And I'm also the author of Strategic Parenting, which is my take on how to best parent an ADHD child without a bunch of yelling and screaming. And the book is available on Amazon. I'm available at terrygingrassphd.com. That's Gingrass, Gingras. Terry's Terry. Looking forward to hearing from you.